What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of the Stakeouts and Shakedowns podcast. I am your host, Wes Clifton. Just to tell you a little bit about me, I recorded a little brief episode 0. Maybe you'll hear it, maybe you won't. But to tell you a little bit about me, I'm just a movie nerd from way back. I do other things. I'm a musician. I've done a little writing, things like that. I'm a history fan, but I just really love movies, and I always have ever since I was a kid. Um, I was in one of those families where my family kind of bonded over watching movies and going to the video store and snagging a pizza on a Friday night. And a lot of what we would watch were action movies. And we would watch things like Beverly Hills Cop and Lethal Weapon and things like that. And I just always really loved those films. And so, as time went by, I worked at a video store for a while. I just became a big movie fan. I love horror movies. I love action movies. I love westerns. I always tell people I have a special place in my heart for anything kind of wild and over the top. So zombie movies, commandos, ninjas, anything that explodes, motorcycles, helicopters, anything like that is right up my alley. But I do, going all the way back to being younger and watching Lethal Weapon and Beverly Hills Cop. I got really interested in the buddy cop subgenre. And so, as time goes by, you seek out more and more movies like that. And I decided it would be fun to do a podcast to just sort of explore that little particular corner of the cinema world. And so that's what we're going to do here. My initial idea was to call this podcast Hey Buddy, and we would have a different one of my buddies on every time to talk about a buddy cop movie. And it turns out there's a lot of podcasts already called Hey Buddy. So now we're Stakeouts and Shakedowns, but the concept is the same. And for our first episode, our inaugural episode here, our very first guest is my good friend, Mo Long. Hey, buddy, how's it going?
It is going great. I am honored to be here as the guest on your inaugural episode.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm really glad you could do this. I'm glad you wanted to do this. Mo and I have done some podcasting together before for our podcast, Celluloid Fiends. And so I thought it'd be great to bring Mo on as the first guest. My old podcasting partner in crime. We could kind of, the boys are back in town, Mo. The boys are back in town.
The boys
Um,
back in
and
town.
so yeah, great. Well, I'm glad you could be here. Mo, for the listeners, maybe tell a little bit about yourself, who you are, what your background is as like a cinephile.
I am an editor, a writer, and a podcaster. I always loved films and watched them growing up with my family, but really started to get into cinema more when I was in high school as well as an undergrad. I took a couple film courses, and my first ever paid, which I use that term very liberally, uh, writing gig was as a film critic for the now defunct examiner.com. And when they went offline in 2016 or 2017, I ended up taking all of my movie reviews and movie best lists and used that as the foundation to start my own website, cupofmo.com. And then started, as you mentioned, the Celluloid Fiends podcast. And I watch a ton of movies. I'm genre agnostic. I'll appreciate pretty much any genre of film.
Yeah, and Mo knows a ton about movies. I always like anytime he and I and several of our other friends get together, we're the kind of people who just, we talk about movies till people are like, okay, don't you guys ever talk about anything else? And the answer is no. Most of my writing gigs I've been paid very conservatively, so I feel you on that. All right, cool, man. So since we're talking about in this podcast, we're talking about buddy cop movies. What are some of your favorites? Do you have a favorite buddy cop film? Do you have a few? What's your thoughts on the genre?
It's really hard for me to pick a favorite film.
I'm the
What
same way.
I often do is say that I have to do like top 5 or 10 by genre and then further break that down into subgenre. Although I think if I had to say a favorite buddy cop movie, this might change if you ask me tomorrow. I might say Beverly Hills Cop. I just think is one of the rare to me perfect films. I think I'd probably give it a 5 out of 5. But I love Lethal Weapon. I love Bad Boys, Tango and Cash, 48 Hours. There are just so many buddy cop movies that I adore.
Well, Beverly Hills Cop is the right answer, so that's good. And no, that's definitely my favorite as well. I like you, I think that Beverly Hills Cop is just one of a handful of, like, essentially perfect movies. It's just so great, and it's definitely one of the things that drew me to the genre, and Lethal Weapon as well. And when you said that, it actually made me think another thing I should say for the listeners in case, hopefully all of you will join us for the long haul. But this podcast, my plan is to, sort of not only hit the big ones of the genre, you know, your Lethal Weapons, your Beverly Hills Cops, your 48 Hours, but also hopefully get into some of the unsung gems of the subgenre. I mean, you know, I'm gonna get into probably things like Stakeout and Shakedown, hence the name of the podcast. But also even things like I might do Cop Game and movies like that. So ones that are less known. So we're gonna mix it up a little bit. I'm not gonna necessarily go in any particular order. Um, well, that's awesome, man. And so, just final thing here in the little introduction section. Have you seen any good movies lately? What have you been watching? You seen anything you'd recommend to the listeners?
I have seen a lot of stuff recently that I enjoyed the heck out of. I saw Sinners, which was phenomenal. I know it's only about halfway through the year right now, but to me, that's a contender for one of the best films of the year. I loved the new Final Destination movie, Final Destination Bloodlines, and I thought it was just a phenomenal return to form for the series. I saw Strange Days recently, which I didn't really know anything about going in, and it was pretty wonky in a lot of places, uh, just very over the top and really gritty, very experimental in some regards. But I would recommend that one as well. What about you? What are some films that you have seen recently that you might recommend?
Man, you're listening to all these new movies. I feel like this year somehow I've just been really like negligent in seeing new films. Um, so I let's see. We did see the new Mission Impossible, which I really liked. I mean, I've liked all those movies. It's funny. I was reflecting on that, and people were talking about like, what's the best one? I don't know because from movie to movie, I kind of just tend to let all those Mission Impossibles run together. And my like idea is like, cool, let's go see Tom Cruise just get progressively crazier and crazier and do crazier stunts. And the new one was that. So I dug it. I like that one a lot. I do need to see Sinners. Like when I saw the trailer for that, I remember thinking that it doesn't appeal to me, but everybody else has said what you just said, that it's so good. Um, and so I definitely do want to check that out. But man, my VHS collection is getting out of control again lately, and so I've been watching a lot of old movies. Like in the past week or so, I watched this. I think it was 1989 movie called One Man Force, which was a I think it was straight to video action movie, cop movie about the guy who played Sloth in the Goonies plays a detective. And so like like the whole thing is basically just he's like this huge dude, and like the movie like definitely lets you know like this is a big guy. So I watched that, and then I revisited Ernest Goes to Camp the other day on VHS, which was a childhood favorite, and in my mind holds up. I really had fun watching that movie.
Oh, that's a classic. The first time I saw that was actually at Boy Scout camp growing
Oh,
up.
that's a good place to watch it.
hmm
We used to
So
rent
you
it from the
said your
library.
VHS collection is getting out of hand. By that, do you mean you don't have enough VHS tapes?
Yeah, that's definitely what I mean. I did invest in another set of like I guess you call those drawers. Are they drawers or shelves or whatever recently? So maybe that'll help me get it under control. But I'm gonna have to take a trip out to Acme Rewind soon and maybe unload a handful of ones that I don't need as much anymore. I do still have a few duplicates. I've tried to trim it down, except for Avenging Force, which you know I have two copies of that, but that's not a duplicate. It's a backup. It's important to have. Uh, all right, well, cool, man. So let's go ahead and get into talking about the main subject of the night. Let's talk a little bit about buddy cop movies. And so, since this is the first episode, I thought maybe we would spend a little while just sort of discussing the genre writ large before we get into tonight's film, which is 48 Hours. So, what is a buddy cop movie to you?
That's a great question, and it was something I was thinking a lot about as I was prepping show notes. I feel like there are a few hallmarks of buddy cop films. It's usually a pair of cops. Y- Normally, I feel like they're kind of at odds throughout the film, and especially at the beginning. But then over the course of the story, they come together in different ways and become a united front. as the picture progresses. Um, that can manifest in different ways. It could be like good cop, bad cop. It can be kind of more straight laced and breaking the rules. But I feel like usually there is some sort of opposition initially that at least somewhat dissipates as the film goes on.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. You know what I mean? Like, so I kind of had written down the quote unquote textbook definition. Not that there's a textbook for buddy cop movies, but typically it's an action or action comedy flick. It is a subgenre of buddy films writ large, kind of the buddy film, which is also I guess it's a genre. And it usually centers around two protagonists with very different personality. They're often cops or other law enforcement. And I did put, but not necessarily. I mean, which might seem counterintuitive, but um, I do think that there are certain movies where I could say like, oh yeah, this feels like a buddy cop movie, and maybe neither one of them are cops, or maybe they're criminals, or something else. I mean, tonight first movie we're talking about here, one of them is a cop, but one of them is not. One of the buddies is not a cop. Um,
Mhm.
so
Well,
I,
I would point to a couple things there. One, like buddy cop, it's singular, so it
yeah,
doesn't necessarily
that makes
mean they
sense.
both have to be cops. Plus, I would point to one of your favorite genres, giallo. How oftentimes the principal investigator in giallo films isn't all in law enforcement at all.
Very
So
true.
I totally agree with what you were saying there. I think it is a genre that can work really well, even if the main characters are not actually cops or in law enforcement.
Yeah, very true. I mean, like you just said, I wasn't even thinking about that, but you get movies like Deep Red and Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I don't know why I couldn't think of that for a sec. Where they're journalists or something like that, or a musician, that are just kind of thrust into a mystery. So yeah, it definitely could work. To me, you get your like sub genres here of like cop and kid, like Cop and a Half or Last Action Hero, or you get like the Cop and Dog, Turner and Hooch, K9, Top Dog, that whole thing. I mean, those are all buddy cop movies. They all pretty much fit the definition. Of course, you could argue that in some of those the dog is a cop. Um, but yeah,
And
so
it's the good boy cop.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Or is it? I mean, Turner and Hooch. I don't know who's the good cop, who's the bad cop. I don't know. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, cool. So I do think, and that's what I wanted to address. Like, I think it's a genre that has. It's like anything else, especially with the movie we were talking about tonight. Maybe some of the later ones they did set out to like, okay, cool, we're gonna market a buddy cop movie. We're gonna make a movie that's just like these other movies that have been popular. So some of them they probably do set out to make a buddy cop movie, but other ones maybe not. Maybe it's just like something that happens or something that it becomes, and so it might not always fit the definition. I will say, like for this show, I'm probably gonna push the genre pretty far. Like there are certain movies that I'm thinking of doing where it. Well, I guess I'll just say to me, it's a movie that focuses on the interaction between two characters that are paired together and usually involves some kind of crime or action setting. I think the line between a buddy film and a buddy cop film can get a little blurry. Like recently I watched Midnight Run for the first time, and I feel like that's a buddy cop movie even though neither of the characters are cops. Um, but it felt like a buddy cop movie to me. But then I started thinking, what separates this from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is certainly a buddy movie, but not a buddy cop movie. And I hate to like be gross, but it made me think about that like famous quote when somebody asked like a congressman or whatever to define porn, and he was like, "I can't define it, but you know it when you see it." And I feel like that about a buddy cop movie. Like I don't know if I can always define it, but you know it when you see it. Like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I wouldn't say so, but something like Midnight Run, yeah, maybe I could see that.
I have not actually seen Confession Time. I haven't actually seen Midnight Run yet.
It was pretty good, man. I saw it for the first time the other day, so it's not like something that I grew up with either. They showed it at the Retro, and I went to see it. And then, of course, I have learned that there are three made-for-TV sequels. The first of which I own on this little DVD pack. Another Midnight Run, which is that's a naming genre that I really like. Oh, the first movie was good. Let's just call it another so and so. So I like that.
Wolf Cop did that as well. There was Wolf Cop, and then there was another Wolf Cop.
Yo, I've still never seen Wolf Cop. I need to see that.
You will love Wolf Cop.
I have a
Real
really strong
quick,
feeling that I
you
will.
mentioned retro. Can we let some of the listeners who might not know what retro is?
Absolutely. You can do it. You want to do it?
Oh, fantastic! I would
Yeah,
love to. Yeah.
give them a plug.
So retro. When we talk about retro, we're referring to the retro film series over at the Carolina Theater of Durham in Durham, North Carolina. It is what I would call a film mecca. On most Friday evenings, they
Oh
have
yeah.
retro double features, part of the retro film series. They also have a bunch of different festivals throughout the year where they'll show uh, retro movies. There's Splatter Flicks in October, which has, as you can probably guess, horror movies. There's Mystery Realm, which has mystery films. There are a bunch of different ones. If you are at all interested in film and live in North Carolina's Triangle area, I cannot recommend going to Retro enough. And if you are not from North Carolina, then if you're passing
Move here.
through, yeah, move here. If you're passing through, it's worth going. It's even worth making a special trip to go to Carolina Theater, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
dude. And you and I actually met at the Retro, and I've actually like a lot of my friends that are like my movie friends I've met either at or through the Retro. So yeah, I totally agree. It's a great place to like gather and appreciate classic films, cult films, things like that. I do wish they would go back to doing the action flicks series again. I think they only did that once or twice, but you and I went and saw Kickboxer.
That was fun.
Yeah, man, I love that movie. Uh, and another thing I mentioned earlier, once again, I'll probably throw out a lot of like North Carolina specific things, and the audience, if you live here, you should check it out, and if not, you'll just be like, man, that sounds awesome. But I mentioned Acme Rewind earlier, which is a kind of a video store uh, in our local area. I guess technically that's a triad, not triangle thing. Um, cool. So another thing that I wanted to say about buddy cop films, and I like this. So tonight's movie, as I've already mentioned a couple times, we'll get to in a second. We're gonna be talking about 48 Hours. I thought, hey, if we're starting a buddy cop podcast, what better to do than talk about 48 Hours for the first episode? And so the director of 48 Hours was the famous Walter Hill. And as I was researching about the movie, I found this little snippet of a line he said that I thought was a pretty neat summation of kind of what he thought and kind of where the buddy cop thing would go. So, and I just kind of start mid sentence here, and he says, "In fact, they're not buddies." He's talking about 48 Hours. In fact, they're not buddies. They don't like each other. I think what the imitators always tried to do was copy the structural foundation of 48 Hours, but fill it in with the more homogenized sensibility of Beverly Hills Cop. And I think that's pretty true, man, because like if you think about it, most of the buddy cop movies, even the ones where the cop like the characters don't really get along at first, they don't feel quite as venomous to each other as they do in 48 Hours. It's more of a Beverly Hills Cop vibe where they start off and they're like, "Who's this out of town cop who plays by his own rules?" And by the end of it, they're like, "Oh, he's cool. He's my best friend."
Yeah, I totally agree with that assessment, and that was something that I was thinking about as I was revisiting 48 Hours because I hadn't seen it since probably like high school or something like that. Uh, but I was like, there's a lot of animosity between these characters, much more so than you see in a lot of the later buddy cop movies.
Yeah, and I guess we'll probably talk about that in just a moment. But so that actually does answer one more question that I was gonna ask you before we get into tonight's feature. I was gonna ask you if this was, how many times, or if if this was by any chance your first watch of 48 Hours. I assumed it wasn't. So you've seen it before.
I have. This was one that I actually got on DVD. I think my
Yeah.
uncle gave this to me for Christmas one year on DVD when I was in probably middle school or high school. I don't exactly know what age. So it was one that I watched a lot growing up because I had the DVD and because I enjoyed it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you're like me. I've seen this one a bunch of times to the point where, as I was watching it for the podcast, I was like, man, it's pretty difficult to really even think about what I want to say about this movie because it's just always sort of been with me. It's one of those things you just accept it like, oh, it's a part of creation. It's a it's a part of the universe. So yeah, 48 Hours. Well, with that being said, we're gonna take just a little break, and we're gonna come back on the other end of this break, and we're gonna talk about 48 Hours.
We ain't partners. We ain't brothers and we ain't friends. I'm putting you down and keeping you down until Gans is locked up or dead. And if Gans gets away, you're gonna be sorry you ever met me.
I'm already sorry.
Nick Nolte is a cop. Eddie Murphy is a con.
I can help you get Gans, but you gotta get me out of here first.
You're crazy.
He pulls some strings.
I see how you need me a little more than you thought, huh, Mr. K?
He pulls some scams.
So where do you want to do it, honey? Want to hop up on the counter?
Nah, we can go in this room over here next to the bathroom.
Give me a break, will
That's
you?
serious.
Come on, we're on the move. Let's go.
They've got two killers to track down.
Toss me that piece, and he won't waste him.
They've got a kidnapping going down.
I want the money. What you talking about? I want that Indian to snap her neck.
They've got a fortune to hunt down.
I want to know what's going on between you and Gans.
$500,000.
And it's all coming down in 48 hours.
But I gave you 48 hours to come up with something, and the clock's running.
This guy got a real itchy trigger finger and he's a nervous cop. You better listen to him, you get your brain blown out.
I'm the calm type.
I'm looking for a good old boy by the name of Billy Bear. Never heard of him. You heard of him now, man? You know, you are real stupid for a cop, man. You're following this guy too close.
Yeah, well, most cops are pretty stupid, but since you landed in jail, what the hell does that make you?
What's happening, Luther? I'm sorry about the door, man. Did that hurt? It looked real painful.
You come clean and we're going again right here, right now.
Are you in some hurry or something?
Yes, I'm in a hurry. I haven't done anything for 3 years.
Oh, you used to be a priest or something.
Save my night.
If you screw up, I can promise you, you're going down.
They couldn't like each other less. They couldn't need each other more.
You want to bet?
And if they can get off each otother's case,
Look at you got a $500 suit on, you're still a lowlife.
Yeah, but I look good.
they just might solve this one.
Being a cop is a hard job, Jack.
Nick Nolte, Eddie Murphy,
We ain't brothers, we ain't partners, and we ain't friends. Now, if Gans gets away with my money, you're gonna be sorry you ever met me.
I'm already sorry.
48 hours.
Y'all be cool.
All right, so we're back and we are talking about our feature presentation for the night, 48 Hours. This movie came out in, it was released on December the 8th, 1982. The director, as I mentioned earlier, is the famous Walter Hill. The score is by one of my favorites, and I think one of your favorites as well, Mo, James Horner. And we're definitely
Yes, sir.
going to talk about that score, like not to skip ahead, but I love this score. The writers on this movie were Roger Spottiswoode, Steven D'Souza, Larry Gross, Walter Hill. Producers, Joel Silver and Lawrence Gordon. And some of the stars, I don't know if I need to list all the stars, but obviously you get Nick Nolte, you get Eddie Murphy, and you get Annette O'Toole, who seem to be sort of the top billed stars. But there's several others as well. Sonny Landham from Predator. Every time I see Sonny Landham, I just want him to go, "We're all gonna die." James
I had the same
Remar,
thought.
Frank McRae, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. So yeah, and I think Mo, you had looked up some. This was a big success at the box office, but I think you had some of those numbers, right?
Yeah, so it had a budget of 12 million according to IMDb, and according to Box Office Mojo, it made almost 79 million at the box office, which is just an incredible performance. One thing that I was intrigued by, Rotten Tomato scores 92% critic, 69 audience. Like, why
Nice.
do you why do you think it had such a discrepancy between the critic and audience rating?
Tell me again the critic score. I got so distracted by that audience score.
92%.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It kind of surprises me once again. Like, I just think that I say once again because I was thinking about something we said on Celluloid Fiends, but like, I tell you, like it always surprises me for one thing when a critic likes a movie that I like, and I do love this movie. So if anything, I kind of thought it would be the other way around. Like I feel like they were trying to do something a little different, and like audiences would have loved it, hence the big box office. And then critics would. So I actually don't really know. I mean, maybe it's just like on the strength of somebody like a Walter Hill or somebody. I don't know. What do you think? You got thoughts on that?
I was really intrigued by this. I was curious if the discrepancy was because at the time this came out, it was so influential and continues to be. And then maybe modern audiences are discovering this and then comparing it to some of the
Oh yeah,
later buddy cop movies
yeah.
and didn't like it as much as like Beverly Hills Cop or Bad Boys or different things like that. But I'm not sure, but I was super intrigued by that because I would have also thought it would have been the other way around. That's kind of what I expected when I pulled up Rotten Tomatoes, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see that critic score.
So that's an interesting thought. Like, so you know more about Rotten Tomatoes than me. So that is, so that's not necessarily like the people at the time. Like, that's a retrospective look back. Like, right?
Exactly. The critics, it can be uh, critic reviews from the time it came out, but it can also be new reviews. It can be pretty mixed. But then the other thing about Rotten Tomato scores is I had looked this up at one point, so this is at least how it worked at some point. But their uh, algorithm, I think, tended to kind of bump things up a little bit because it wasn't good with if there was like a half star or something, or if so you would end up maybe something was rated like 3.5 stars and it would bump it to like a 4. I think that was how it worked. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but that was still a big gap with the 92 and 69.
Yeah, so I guess the thing I was thinking is if it's like a retrospective, another thing that might bump down that audience score is that I mean straight up, man, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but there's some things in this movie that are said and some points of views that are portrayed that I feel like might strike a modern audience like pretty uncomfortably. You know what I mean? So maybe that might drive it down a little bit too.
Oh, for sure. And I had forgotten a lot about a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
those, a lot of those elements because I think the last time I saw this was probably late high school or early
Oh,
undergrad.
it's
Like
been
it
a
had
while
been a
for you.
minute. Yeah. So upon revisiting this was like, oh, there's a lot I forgot about.
Okay, cool. Like so I went. They showed it. I can't even remember if I said this already in the episode, but they showed it at the Retro very recently as a double feature with Midnight Run. And so I went. I mean, I've seen it a lot, but I hadn't seen it in several years, I guess. And so we went and saw that. We went and saw that double feature, which was awesome. And then I did watch it. I watched my. Well, I say watched it on VHS. I ripped it off my VHS a while back. So I watched the VHS version. Which is the way any movie should be watched for this podcast. So I had revisited it
Superior
there.
format.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I believe that. Long live VHS. I by the way, also the listeners will just hear me talk a lot about VHS in this podcast, and that just is what it is. I love VHS. And a lot of my guests will probably love VHS. So, yeah, 48 hours, man. Let's I'm gonna read the plot description from the back of the DVD, which is the exact same as on my VHS. But I don't know that it's a great description, so we might have to throw a little bit more in. So it says, Nick Nolte is a rough-edged cop after two vicious cop killers. He can't do it without the help of smooth and dapper Murphy, who is Eddie Murphy, who is serving time for a $500,000 robbery. This unlikely partnership trades laughs as often as punches as both pursue their separate goals. Nolte wants the villains, Murphy wants his money and some much needed female companionship. Watch for Murphy's hilarious scene in the redneck country western bar. You'll want to see it again and again. I didn't realize that part was in the description. Yeah, so basically, and maybe you throw in some things if I miss anything out, but this movie is about, so we start off and we see a prison break. Basically, there James Remar's character, which we find out his name is Gans, is working on like a chain gang, and this guy comes and fakes that his car's broke down. Well, it turns out that Sonny Landam, who plays Billy Bear, who's like his partner in crime, and they do this breakout where they kill several cops and they get away. Switch to Nick Nolte. He plays Jack Cates, who's kind of this like hard scrabble cop. We find out a little bit about his life because we see him waking up with his girlfriend, and they seem to have kind of a rocky relationship, and he just kind of he kind of seems to not have his act together. Maybe one of your favorite lines that you had put in your show notes about the clean shirt made me think about maybe maybe his life is he's not got his act together.
Oh yeah, Elaine says, if you let me come over to your place once in a while, you could put on a clean shirt in the morning. And Jack says, "What makes you think I got any clean shirts in my place?"
So he's that kind of guy. Maybe he doesn't have any clean shirts at all. And so, anyways, they have a little bit of a fight. Then he leaves and he goes to this call that he hears about on the radio. Some of his cop buddies are there, and they think they're just going to catch a guy who stole a credit card and checked out a hotel room to get with some ladies. Well, it turns out that card has somehow ended up in the hands of our main bad guys who are up there with these ladies, and it turns into a shootout. And these two cops get killed, and Gans steals Jack Cates' gun and gets away. So Jack Cates is mad. They got his gun. They killed some cops on his watch, and he needs to go find them. So he tracks down some of their known associates, and he comes across Reggie Hammond, played by Eddie Murphy, who's in jail for a crime. And he goes and gets Eddie Murphy out. He's got 48 hours with Eddie Murphy to try to track them down. And so Eddie Murphy has his own reasons for wanting to get out. One, he just wants to get out. Like it said in the plot description, he's trying to find some female companionship. But also we find out that what happened was there was this kind of gang, and they stuck up a drug dealer, and they stole his money and hid it away. And so Gans has busted out because he wants to get to that money, and Eddie Murphy wants to make sure to get that money before Gans can get away with it. And so, I would say hilarity ensues, but most of this movie, like, cop stuff ensues. Like, they're chasing crimes. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of like rough around the edges stuff, but also some funny interactions while they try to stop Gans and Billy Bear from their crime spree, and they try to get the money and find the bad guys.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised upon rewatching this, probably because a lot of the buddy cop movies that I've seen more recently did have a lot of comedy. I feel like there are some laughs for sure, but it was more like gritty and action oriented than I think I was expecting.
Yeah, I think from reading through some of the interviews and things with people like Walter Hill and Larry Gross, who actually is kind of interesting. If you look it up, Larry Gross, one of the writers, kept a diary during like a film diary during his time on 48 Hours, and you can find that if you Google it and look it up. So you can kind of read his thoughts as they were making the movie, which is pretty neat. But it seems like I guess they always sort of thought that it was going to be funny because as we're going to talk about probably eventually, like they considered people like Richard Pryor for the role, but it seems like they weren't really sure what they were going to do. It seems like they were making this action movie. At first, apparently, it was took place in Louisiana, and it was about these convicts like kidnapping the governor's daughter and duct taping dynamite to her head, and they were going to blow her up in 48 hours if they didn't get out. But I don't know if they really knew that they were making a comedy or an action movie. It seems like it kind of maybe started off being more action oriented, and then eventually the comedy started creeping in.
I would not be surprised if that were the case. And one piece of trivia that I read on IMDb was that Paramount Pictures studio execs were worried about the movie being too violent and that it wouldn't work as a comedy. And it was particularly that hotel lobby shootout that you mentioned earlier
Yeah,
that gave them concerns.
it's rough, man. Like there's a lot of violence going on in that, like a lot of shooting, and it's rough scene.
Yeah, it's rough. And even kind of the dynamic between Cates and Hammond is pretty rough
Yeah,
for a lot of the film. They're trading kind of verbal blows throughout a lot of the movie, and then there's even like a fight scene that they have in an alleyway, which as I was watching that, I started cracking up, and I wrote down, this is almost as long as the alley fight scene in They Live.
Okay, now that's a movie. Man, you already like. I'm already like on the spot here. I've never seen They Live. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. I know it is.
I think you will really love They Live.
Yeah, man, I'm
John
sure I will.
Carpenter.
Like, I love Roddy Piper, and I love John Carpenter. I honestly, I don't know. I don't know why I've never seen it. I feel like it's just been on my list forever, and there's like, I have more than one person who's like, "Oh, we got to watch that movie." So now I'm like, who do I watch it with, or do I one day just sneak it on my own and just tell people, "Oh, I saw it and I loved it." I don't know, but I've never actually seen that movie. Um, but yeah, I think that I think it's a lot grittier than like, once again, like we were saying earlier, when I think about buddy cop movies, like first thing comes to mind is Beverly Hills Cop or even like Lethal Weapon, which there's a lot of rough stuff in Lethal Weapon as well. But this
Mhm.
movie just somehow has like a venom to it that those don't have, like just a kind of a darker edge than those do.
I agree, because I think in some of those cases, yeah, there's some dark moments in Lethal Weapon for sure, but I think they're offset by a lot of the over the top moments. So I think
Yeah.
there's definitely like a balance there, and I feel like 48 Hours kind of leans more biting and acerbic with some of its content.
Yeah, I think acerbic is a good description. Um, and so, the reason why I chose 48 Hours for the first episode of this podcast is because it's usually sort of considered like a lot of people would say this is the first buddy cop movie. But I think in reality, it's safer to say it's sort of the father of the genre. There are people point to earlier films, things like Freebie and the Bean, and things like that that came earlier that you could possibly consider buddy cop films as well. But this is the one that sort of kicked off the buddy cop trend and had people kind of copying it, and they saw this movie was a big success at the box office, and so they start kind of copying it. I told you before we got on that I think it's sort of like you can think about this sort of like Halloween it was for slasher films. Like there were slasher films before Halloween. There was Black Christmas, there was Texas Chainsaw, you could even say Psycho. But after Halloween, it was off to the races with slashers, and I think 48 Hours is that for buddy cop movies.
Yeah, it may not have been the first buddy cop movie, but I think it's the probably the best known early one, and it really popularized the genre. It kind of showed studios that this kind of film could be really successful. I mean, it had a budget of 12 million and it made almost 79 million at the box office. That's a pretty good ROI.
That's $1982.
And yeah, I know. Hey, adjust that for inflation. That's a lot of cash. Uh, but then if you look at after that, like the 80s and 90s, like especially early and mid 90s, had a lot of these buddy cop movies. Like Beverly
Yeah.
Hills Cop came 2 years later.
Yeah.
And then that franchise lasted for 4 films. I think it really showed that. I think 48 Hours really showed that Eddie Murphy could headline a buddy cop movie
Well, and that
incredibly
kind of
well.
brings me to another one of the things I want to talk about, which is that like this movie is the breakout role for. I mean, I guess I'll just go ahead and say that the person that I usually say is the greatest comedic actor possibly of all time. I mean, in my opinion, I just think, especially early career Eddie Murphy, but straight up, I love the new Beverly Hills Cop as well. So maybe late career Eddie Murphy as well. Maybe we just have to kind of dodge that mid career Eddie Murphy. But like, I just think he was one of the great comedic actors of all time, and this is his breakout role. This is debut film role.
Are you saying you did not enjoy The Adventures of Pluto Nash?
I took a girl to see The Adventures of Pluto Nash on a date. That relationship did not pan out. Like,
Which was a better decision, that or watching Rising Sun, another wonderful buddy cop movie with your parents?
all around not great decisions. All around not great decisions, man. Yeah. Rising Sun. I forgot about that. That was an awkward. We had to turn it off eventually. My parents were like, they were not digging that. Yeah, dude. No, I'm not the biggest Pluto Nash fan. Hey, maybe it's time for me to revisit it. I just want the best for Eddie Murphy, and I'm so glad he's back. But I just think he's one of the the greats of all time, man. He was in so many movies that I just love. Beverly Hills Cop, as we've said before, like it's a movie that's really important to me, and I know it is to you as well. Uh, Perfect score. Not to just like get off on a Beverly Hills Cop tangent, but so good. But like, I just love like Trading Places. I watched that again the other day, and Coming to America, and just I even love The Golden Child. Like a lot of people don't love The Golden Child. I love The Golden Child. Have you seen that one?
I have not, but I thought about picking it up because Vinegar Syndrome, a boutique Blu-ray distributor that I know we both love
I
dearly,
love Vinegar Syndrome,
they I think put it out on 4K.
dude. Yeah, I think you're right, man. I might need to pick that up. I really like that movie. I feel like it's sort of doesn't get its due. But this,
And I don't know if you saw the SNL 50th anniversary special,
I did
but
not.
Eddie Murphy was on there, and he was on a skit, Black Jeopardy, and he was
Sounds
impersonating
like that.
Tracy Morgan with
Okay.
Tracy Morgan right next to him,
Okay.
like actual Tracy Morgan. And I
I also
was
love
in
Tracy Morgan.
tears laughing so hard. I think people forget how talented Eddie Murphy is in general, but especially at impersonations.
Yeah, man. He's just so funny. I just really love Eddie Murphy. And he's coming off of SNL to do this movie. So like he kind of made a big smash in sort of the early days of SNL, and he comes off of SNL to do this film, his first film.
What did you think about this as his debut theatrical role? Like, how do you feel like he did
I
in
feel like he
this?
knocked it out of the park, man. I mean, I feel like, I mean, you know, he definitely like comes into his own a little bit more. Like, Trading Places comes out the next year, and like I do think he's funnier in Trading Places. I think he kind of found his footing a little bit, but like coming straight out the gate and with a performance like Reggie Hammond in this movie, like he's hilarious in this, but he's also just a good actor in this. Like he handles kind of the racial tensions. He handles the action scenes, and I think that kind of like is one of the things that sort of would set Eddie Murphy apart in his early career is things like that. He can handle the action scenes and things like that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Knocked it out of the park was the exact turn of phrase that I was thinking while watching this. He just nailed it. And to put some perspective into how quickly he transitioned from SNL to 48 Hours, he apparently didn't start working on the movie until a few days into principal photography because he was finishing up season 7 of SNL.
Yeah, I had read that. Like, apparently it was like, I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong number. It's like 2 weeks or something. He came 2 weeks late into the film, and like they didn't really get to do a lot of rehearsals or anything. He just kind of had to jump in.
And I
But
mean, he absolutely killed it in this role on very short notice.
yeah, I think it's awesome, man. I think it's great. And another thing that I was reading a lot about this is that apparently they had a lot of problems from the studio, like reading the script. The studio was reading over the script and thought that it wasn't funny enough, like the movie wasn't going to be funny enough. And one thing that I had read that some of the writers and filmmakers were saying is that just kind of demonstrates that what Eddie Murphy was bringing to this film wasn't necessarily evident from the words on paper. Like it was Eddie Murphy. The script, the studio is reading it and they're like, this is not funny enough. But then you see what Eddie Murphy brings to that character, and it makes it a whole different thing. It puts it in a whole other level.
And this, I know, comes as no surprise to you. You probably thought this while watching it because it's true of a lot of Eddie Murphy films, but he improvised a lot of the
Yeah.
script. I think a lot of the dialogue between Cates and Hammond was improvised.
Yeah, man, he's just the best. He's just a rare talent. I just really think that Eddie Murphy's great. You know what's funny about this is that apparently at first they were, they were hesitant. The studio was hesitant to cast Eddie Murphy, and it also even seems like it's crazy for us to think about now, but it also even seems to think like maybe there was some pushback at different times about casting a black actor in one of these big roles like this. But the person who kind of like they considered first was Richard Pryor. You know, and I'd written down on my paper the Richard Pryor effect, my own term, but I just feel like, Richard Pryor becoming such a big breakout comedy star kind of paved the way for roles like this. And so when they were kind of first thinking about this movie, they had a Richard Pryor type in mind, but by the time they ever made this movie, which like many others, kind of sat in development hell for many years, um, they considered Richard Pryor too big of a star by this point to get for the role.
I really wonder what this movie would have been like with Richard Pryor. I think Eddie Murphy is unquestionably the
Yeah, man.
perfect fit to bring Reggie Hammond to life. But I was kind of reading over some of the other casting choices and wondering, like, if Richard Pryor had gotten this role, do you think it would have leaned more comedy?
Almost certainly. I mean, almost certainly, right? I love Richard Pryor, but like if I think about all the Richard Pryor movies that I like the first one I think about is always Brewster's Millions, but I think there's a lot of other ones you could think of. But he just is he going to do the action the same way that Eddie Murphy does? I don't know. Like I don't know about that.
The one that I was thinking about was Superman.
I thought that's what
Was it like was it part 4?
I think it's part 3. I think he's in part 3. I might
Okay.
be wrong about that. But I think he's part 3.
But that was the one that I was thinking of because it's taking this genre action and then Richard Pryor was just super slapstick in that. And so I feel like this
Yeah.
would have been a very kind of over the top, a much sillier film. I don't think it would have been kind of the more subdued comedy that we ended up getting with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte headlining.
Now, another person that apparently they considered was Gregory Hines. And so if you want to see what that might have been like, you can look at Running Scared a little while later, which we'll get to on this podcast for sure. And Gregory Hines winds up in Running Scared. So that would have been an interesting pick as well. But definitely they land on the right. They definitely land on the right guy with Eddie Murphy, in my opinion.
I 100% agree.
And it launches him into the stratosphere. I mean, at this point, Eddie Murphy becomes just like one of the hugest stars of the 80s. And thank goodness, because like I said, one of my all-time favorite actors. So, another thing really the thing about this movie, right? And what kind of once again sets the template for these type of movies going forward is that as much as it is a movie with a plot and a plot that I find very, very interesting, sort of I guess I don't even know if you would say run of the mill crime movie because there are some elements that are sort of run of the mill, but really like the concept of getting the prisoner out on a 48-hour release to help out the cop. I don't know, that's not exactly all that run of the mill, but the main thing that this movie relies on is the interaction between the two characters. Without the interaction between Nick Nolte as Jack Cates and Eddie Murphy as Reggie Hammond, like this movie is not the same. And as that's the main push of this film. So what do we think? What are your initial thoughts on the interactions? Just the interplay between these two characters.
It was really unique because there's so much animosity between them throughout the whole film. Nolte's character Cates is just putting Reggie down the whole time, but still there's this chemistry between the two characters, and I think a lot of that was probably the behind the scenes chemistry between the actors with a lot of this and it manifests through this kind of quick-witted retorts and this fast-paced dialogue. So kind of underneath the veneer of animosity between the characters, they work so well together.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't think the movie could be the same without just this bitter vitriol. Like I thought both actors did good. I keep talking a lot about Eddie Murphy because I'm such a big fan, but I think Nick Nolte also great in this movie. And I just find their disdain for each other very believable. Like they do a very good job, especially that scene when Nick Nolte first comes in. And I always love that scene. I think about whenever I talk about this movie, one of the first things that happens is just by instinct, I go, Roxanne, you don't understand the red light. So he comes into the jail and he's trying to find Reggie Hammond, and immediately Reggie Hammond's like, "What do you want, cop?" And they just have this real animosity for each other. They kind of know that they need each other, but they just do not like each other. I find it really. We've said this before. It was a little shocking because other buddy cop movies are a little for example, let's just address the elephant in the room, Mo. You and I watched Collision Course a little while back, and while Jay Leno and Pat Morita are giving each other the business, it's just never as mean as Jack Cates and Reggie Hammond.
It is not, and I think a lot of that comes down to Jay Leno's acting chops were subpar at best.
Hey man, you watch what you say about Jay Leno. No, No, but so I think they did great. Now, my next thing to say about this is, what do we think about Nick Nolte's character? And I have some things to say, but I just like I don't want to drop that bomb on you. But what do you think about Jack Cates?
The- Nick Nolte, it just is so chiseled at playing these really scuzzy characters and these like sleazeball characters. So, like when we meet Kate's, one of the first things he does is pour some kind of liquor into his coffee mug,
Yeah,
and
straight
he's
up.
doing that throughout the whole movie.
Throughout.
Like even he's at the station, he's
Yeah,
just like
man.
taking swigs out of his flask, and I feel like the Nick Nolte was born to play those really disheveled sleazeball roles, and I think he did a great job at kind of embodying that element of his character.
I'm afraid to look it up because I know it's going to be like, I'm going to look it up. It's going to be like, Nick Nolte was 34 years old when he made this movie. But like in my mind, he looks like he's one of those dudes who like, he could be 34, he could be 50. I don't know how old he is, but he definitely does a great job at like the whole like disheveled, like you said, like drinking in the morning cop. Um, you know, the other thing about this is like, he's got that real gravelly voice and everything. But the other thing about this is I was interested because once again, one of the things I was reading, and I can't remember now what it was, said that Nolte apparently was like kind of hesitant to do this role. Like he didn't really love how violent and mean and aggressive and even like bigoted he had to be to play this role. And so he was kind of hesitant to do it. And as much as like you know, and this is the next thing I was going to talk about, but like the kind of bigoted moments are really uncomfortable. Nick Nolte does a really good job of making me believe the character of Jack Cates as like a real character.
Yeah, I agree with that, and oof, I 100% on that statement there. A lot of the dialogue that Kate's says is tough to hear.
Man, straight up, like, you know, if you ever go back and watch old movies from like the 80s, there's a lot of times where I'm thinking like, whoa, they could drop some real bombs back then that you wouldn't hear in movies anymore. Like, but even not necessarily all the way back to the 80s. I went back and watched Old School recently, and there was a few lines where I was like, whoa, it just felt really weird. Um,
Old school, like the comedy movie.
yeah. I revisited
Huh?
it for the first time in a long time. I used to love that movie and still do. I
I
think
haven't
it's real
seen that
fun.
one in a minute.
Well,
But yeah, there's a lot more racism in the script, especially Cates's his dialogue towards Hammond. I didn't remember a lot of that, and I found it difficult, very difficult
yeah, for
to
sure.
watch.
I mean, there's the hard R's for one thing, but then also like there's just some other slurs about various other things where you're just like, man, it's rough to watch. But it does add I do think it does add something to the nature of their dislike for one another. Um you know, you just like I feel like in the long run it's uncomfortable to hear, but like it does help you believe like these two dudes do not like each other, and it helps you to feel that way.
Yeah, it felt very believable.
Yeah. And I do like so we had talked about this a little before, and so one thing you had pointed out is there is a line that I really liked, because I do think you were asking me before we started recording, like, you know, to what degree do I think this movie was supposed to take on like racial tensions of the day. And you know, I don't know that that's like what Walter Hill or anybody else would say they set out to do, but I definitely think it was intentional to like they definitely play into racial tensions. You know, you can feel what race relations might have been like in a time before either you or I were born by watching this movie. So I do think they were definitely trying to address that. And what I was getting at was you had mentioned the line where when they kind of start to make up with one another at the end and kind of start to respect each other, you know, Nick Nolte says, you know, I'm not gonna say the words, but he's like, I'm sorry about all that stuff I said. And Eddie Murphy says something like, you know, well, Nick Nolte says, you know, I'm sorry about all that stuff I said. I was just doing my job. And Eddie Murphy says, well, doing your job doesn't take care of all that.
Yeah, because throughout the movie, I was like, a lot of this is really uncomfortable, and then that scene happened, and it kind of made me wonder if this was trying to make like a point. Um, I still feel like I agree with what you said about it. Kind of makes you really feel like these characters hate each other. But one of the things I was wondering is, I feel like there were ways you could have established that animosity without all of the
Oh yeah.
rampant racism.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, definitely if you make this movie today, there's ways you can do that. You know what I mean, without some of that stuff for sure. It's really uncomfortable to watch, and like I had forgotten about that. But so yeah, in no way am I saying like, oh, I'm glad they had that. You know what I mean? But I just kind of thought that interplay between the two characters is definitely worth exploring. One thing that I did before we move on from this that I did want to note was that one of the quotes I read in this Walter Hill interview, which I'm referencing Walter Hill enough to where I should say a lot of this is coming from an interview that Walter Hill did with John Zelazny called Walter Hill Last Man Standing. But one thing he said was he was talking about how really, even though it's like a gritty game and a mean spirited game, he said that in his mind, these two characters are playing a game with each other and they know they're kind of playing each other. And so his quote was, I don't think Nolte's character is really a racist. So at least in Walter Hill's impression, like he was doing all that, like Nick Nolte's character was just doing all that to kind of keep Reggie in check. But he definitely goes too far, and that's why I like that line where Reggie says, just doing your job doesn't cover all that, because it's sort of like he tells him like, hey Jack, in my mind he was telling him like, hey Jack, I get it, but you need to work on that. It's kind of how I read that line,
That was my interpretation as well.
which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, I think that what I was gonna say though that I do really like is I do really appreciate as the film goes along and their relationship starts to improve. And for me, and I think it's pretty obvious, it's not like I'm discovering some deep truth. That moment happens when um, after probably my favorite scene, and we can talk about this later, but is this long like kind of chase scene where the character of Luther is got the money and they're trying to trail the money so they can find Gans, and then everything goes awfully wrong and they all break up and split up, and in the chaos, Eddie Murphy's character kind of gets away, and he could just split, but instead he calls Nick Nolte and is like, "Hey, here's where I am. You can come get me." And I think Nick Nolte like really seems to appreciate that. Like it kind of is a way of like finding out that Reggie Hammond is sort of an honorable guy and didn't want to get him in trouble, even though he could have jumped his sentence early and took off.
Yeah, I really liked that part because there was a scene earlier in the film. It was when they go to the redneck bar. I think it was like Torchies or something like that. And I feel like that is kind of when Kate starts to respect Reggie.
That's interesting. I kind of thought I mean, maybe a little, but I think after that, after that, he still seemed kind of like, because they have their fight after that, right? Like their big fist fight, I think.
So I think he was still kind of trying to keep him in check, but I think that was the moment he started to kind of respect him. I don't think it was like full on respect, but I think that was like a turning point in their relationship.
Yeah, I could see that. I can see that for sure.
I
But
do have a question for you here. Can
okay.
we talk about the sequel very briefly?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna do an episode about the sequel eventually, but we can intro it a little bit. Sure. Timeout. All right, so it's your buddy Wes here. We're about to drop a major spoiler for Another 48 Hours, which is the sequel to the film we're talking about on this episode. It's been out for a really long time, so there's a good chance you don't care about that, but I'm probably going to do an episode about Another 48 Hours at some time in the future, so I just thought I would drop in and let you know there's a pretty major spoiler coming up for that film. So you have that knowledge now. It's in your hands. If you need to skip ahead just a couple minutes, it's not very long, just a couple minutes in this podcast, great. If not, keep going. All right, great. Time in.
Okay, because here's my question. So there's kind of just a side character in 48 Hours, Kehoe.
Yep.
And the
Spoiler
scene you were
alert.
talking
Spoiler
about
alert.
where Reggie calls the police station, and leaves the message. So Kehoe gets the message, and then he doesn't give it to Cates right away.
Uh-huh.
In the sequel, in another 48 hours, Kehoe he's the big bad. He's
Yeah.
the primary villain. And what I was curious about upon rewatching this was that story arc for that character. Do you think that was planned from the get-go, or do you think that was like a retcon and they came up with that as a twist for the sequel?
I got no clue, man. I mean, surely they didn't already have that planned out. Surely they didn't that far in advance. But it is kind of interesting to me that the character of Kehoe comes back to be so important in the sequel. I remember thinking that at the time. The first time I saw another 48 Hours was way after I'd already seen 48 Hours, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, okay, cool." So I don't know if it's a retrofit. It's a really good one.
I thought it was a retrofit, but it was just something I was curious about as like I was watching
Yeah,
48 Hours and just kind of
I don't
wondering,
know.
was that planned? Or I don't think it was, but it was something that piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's pretty interesting. But like, the thing I was going to say about Nolte and Eddie Murphy's characters' relationship before we move off of that was just then at the very end after they kind of make up for it. I love the part when they take up for each other in front of the in front of the shouting police lieutenant played by Frank McRae, who I really love in that role. Probably because of how much I love him in Last Action Hero. But he's like shouting and screaming, and is he the best? Is he the best to ever do that role? Like that kind of role? He is, right?
I think he is, and the, I think it was at least like 3 or 4 times that kind of he played that character.
Yeah. I love that. I want him. I want to see him in every movie as like a police captain shouting at the renegade cop who plays by his own rules. He does it so well. I love in Last Action Hero when he does it so hard it breaks the glass on his office and everything. That dude's the best. But they start taking up for each other, and Nick Nolte eventually says like, this guy, he's got more heart than anybody I've known, and he's got more courage than any partner I've ever had, or something like that, which kind of flies back in the face of the classic line, we ain't brothers, we ain't partners, and we ain't friends.
Mhm.
So I just really like that. So I think the thing I was going to say about that was Walter Hill has said that he thinks the term buddy cop is a misnomer, at least when applied to 48 Hours, because they're not buddies, they don't like each other. But I think it's safe to say by the end they are buddies. I think it's safe to say, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's the trajectory of the film. They start
Yeah.
out with so much animosity towards one another, and then by the end of the film, there is this kind of mutual respect, and they are buddies.
And I think it all I really do think it all comes down to that scene where Eddie Murphy could have done anything, but he calls Jack and he's like, "Hey, I'm here. Come get me. I'm not going to run off on you." And I just think that, you can see that means a lot to the Jack Cates character, because he seems like a guy who has a hard time trusting really anybody. And so I think that's the kind of thing that is impactful to him.
And
So,
then Cates kind of tries to reciprocate, and then
yeah.
he lets he lets Reggie drive to his car back to uh, jail, and he lets him have an adventure with his lady friend.
Goes on a little adventure. Yeah. Yeah, and he even lets him keep his ill-gotten gains. Like he even tells him like, "You can keep this money." And Eddie Murphy's like, "You don't want any of it?" And he's like, "That's not my style." I thought that was cool. He's not a crooked cop. He's kind of a dirtbag in a lot of ways. I took my girlfriend to see this movie, and she's like, "I hate that guy," but but like, but at the same time, like he's at least not a crooked cop. So my next question is, what do we think of the bad guys in this movie? What do we think of James Remar and Sonny Landham as Gans and Billy Bear?
I thought they had I thought they had some good chemistry. They're both pretty sadistic.
Yeah,
I love the opening scene when uh Sonny actually Billy Bear, when he breaks Gans out, with, because Billy Bear drives up in this pickup truck, and there's the chain gang, although none of them are actually chained up, which had me curious. Was Gans in minimum security?
I don't know. He's only on like a 5-year stint or something like that, they say, at some point.
But But Billy Bear drives up, and so Gans starts taunting him, and then they fight. But it's a fight. They're actually kind of rolling around in the mud, but it's staged so that Billy Bear can then shoot one of the cops watching over the prisoners and bust Gans out. And then there were some really interesting parts there, like at the end in the third act when uh, Billy Bear and Gans are trying to get the money from Luther. Billy Bear pulls up driving a bus. Where did they get a bus?
I mean, you gotta assume they killed somebody. These dudes were killing everybody. That's what struck me is like you said they were sadistic. These dudes are really sadistic. They are killing everybody. And it surprises me because Gans, like I said, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but at the first time, I'm pretty sure they say he's on like a 5-year sentence. He's serving 5 years. Maybe they say he has got 5 more years, but I think they said he has a 5-year sentence. And I was like, dude, a 5-year sentence? I mean, he's got to bust out because he wants to get this money before Reggie can get out and get away with it. It's a $500,000, which, in $82 1982 money, he wants that money. So he busts out to get it. But I mean, he busts out of prison and he's killing cops. They kill that guy who we find out later was actually one of their associates in the gang that they leave dead on the park bench.
Oh yeah, on
I
the
mean,
park bench.
yeah. Do what now?
I said on the park bench.
Yeah, that guy. That we find out real briefly that he was like the 4th or 5th, I guess, member of their old gang. But they just killing everybody, and I just was really struck by how evil these bad guys were.
Yeah, and one thing I really liked was the juxtaposition of how evil Billy Bear and Gans are, and then Gans is watching cartoons in a lot of scenes, and
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of a neat dynamic there and contrast that was set up in a number of shots.
that's sort of a thing, right? Isn't there a bad guy watching cartoons and stuff like Speed and movies like that as well, or am I making that up?
I think
I thought it was sort of a
probably
thing.
it's a really effective foil there, something
Yeah,
that's kind of really innocent, and then something that's really sadistic.
yeah, I think so too. I don't know. I would say a lot about that. I think both those actors are cool. I mean, Sonny Landham, I mostly only know from this and Predator. Apparently he like tried to run for like mayor of some town or something at some point. And then James Remar obviously has been in everything, and he's great. And then my next question, and once again, we don't have to spend a long time on this because the movie certainly doesn't. But what do we think of the love angle?
So I was really intrigued by Kate's love interest, Elaine,
Yeah,
and supposedly she was actually in the movie a lot more. I kind of would have been interested to see that relationship explored because the film kind of teases that in a number of scenes, not just at the beginning, but also they have a conversation on the phone towards the end of the film when she's working, she's at a bar, and it seemed like there was more to Kate's and Elaine's relationship that I think would have been kind of interesting to see. I think it would have padded the runtime, which I'd have been okay with. And then, so I liked that. I felt like it was a little underdeveloped for what I would have preferred to see. And then, so at the end of the movie, Reggie meets Candy at a bar,
oh, you got her name. I
and
didn't get your name.
yeah, and he takes her to like the motel across the street. I can't remember. She was not in the sequel, was she?
Man, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the sequel. My thought was, if memory serves, Eddie Murphy's still in prison in the sequel, so I guess he did. I guess that whole "I'll be back in 6 months" thing didn't pan out.
No, it didn't. And I was trying to remember like what happened.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I need to rewatch the sequel for sure. A lot of people hate the sequel. I remember thinking it was kind of fun. Um, but yeah, I don't really remember. My thing about the love angle was funny. So like, I do agree with you that it was a little. Oh, first off, I should just say this: the runtime of this movie, yeah, 90 minutes. 90 minutes is perfect runtime for a movie, and I stand on that. I stand on that. 90 minutes, that's perfect. What's up, Sebastian? Uh, that's perfect runtime. Mo, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
here.
Okay, cool. I heard Sebastian going off. All right, cool. So, but I was going to say the love angle for me, a little underdeveloped as well. So apparently, the story there is that Walter Hill didn't really get it. He kind of didn't think it added much to the film, and Larry Gross, like really, one of the writers, really championed that character and wanted to expand that character and do more with her. And so I think what we end up with there is like somewhere in the middle that's not really satisfying either way. Like Walter Hill kind of wanted to dial it back, and Larry Gross wanted to amp it up, but his thought was, and I'm specifically talking about Elaine, Jack Cates' his girlfriend there. Apparently, according to Larry Gross, he thought it was important because he said that the lack of, basically, in his words, these guys haven't been laid in a while, and they're even though clearly Jack Cates is with his girl at the first, but he's like, their rockiness of their relationship is adding to the tension in their dynamic, and so that's why he thought it was important, Larry Gross. Um, I like I said, I don't know about that because Cates appears to have just been with her the night before the whole thing starts.
Yeah, that part I don't quite understand, but I do think it would have been interesting to see their Kate's and Elaine's relationship explored a little bit more.
What I find so funny about it is, do you remember the last thing that Elaine says in this film?
I do not.
She says, F you, and hangs up. That's the last we see of her. Is they're having this fight when she's at work, and Cates puts her on hold because Reggie calls him from the bar telling him where to come, and he almost leaves, and Kehoe is like, hey, your girl's on the other line, and he goes back and picks it up, and she's just like, F you, and hangs up. And that's the last we get. We get no resolution in that relationship, and I thought that was really funny to me. That's where that love angle ended out there. So I think mostly it does serve to kind of give us this side of Jack Cates outside the job, I guess.
And then I haven't seen the sequel in a while either, but I don't remember her being in the sequel. So I
I
wonder if that was the last time that Kate's heard from her or saw her.
I don't remember. He's got to butter her up a little bit if he wants her to still be around in the sequel, which came out like what, 8 years later. So,
I did read. So the last thing she says is "F you." The F word is used 48 times in various forms during the course of the film, according to IMDb, and that appears to be coincidental. It is not because of the title.
well, I just wanted to use this. It's not actually a joke. I just want to throw that in. I was trying to look for a place. Yeah, it's pretty. That's pretty interesting. Just a strange coincidence there. They definitely say it a lot. I didn't count, but they definitely say it a lot. So, kind of last thing I want to say before we move on to a few other things is what are some of your favorite scenes from 48 Hours?
I thought the scene at the Redneck Bar was phenomenal. I think that was just like a really kind of quintessential Eddie Murphy scene. Where he's just improvising, he's getting to kind of do some different voices. He has some really kind of witty lines in there, such as he's patting down this redneck guy and he pulls a wad of money out of the pocket and he says, "Man, you're loaded here. What the fuck's this?" And the redneck says, "Tax refund." And Reggie says, "Bullshit. You're too fucking stupid to have a job."
Yeah.
And just the way that he commands that scene, and when he does, he's a convict, and in that scene he's like pretending to be a cop, and everyone in the bar buys it.
Yeah, it's the kind of the classic scene, I think, from this movie. And to me, that is above all other places in this movie where you see the Eddie Murphy that he becomes in later films. That's Eddie Murphy kind of trotting out the same chops he's going to do over and over again in a movie like Beverly Hills Cop. You know what I mean? Like that's Eddie Murphy.
It was quintessential Eddie Murphy. I really liked, there was like a kind of a car chase scene in the third act where they're tailing I think they were tailing Luther, and I liked that because it was just kind of this really it was just like a very quintessential kind of car chase scene. I loved the finale that was in Chinatown because just the lighting, and I don't know if they shot it on location somewhere, the sets, but there were just some really cool visuals in that scene.
Yo, man, you can tell that we've been good friends for a while because basically what you're saying is all the things I was going to say about my favorite scenes. You also thought the same. So, like, yeah, definitely the bar scene is cool. It's really funny. I think that's the classic. But what I was going to say, my favorite scene is for sure the one you're talking about, like the chase scene where they're tailing Luther. Like Luther goes to get. But we haven't mentioned Luther, but I guess people, if they've seen the movie, they know that Luther's another member of the gang, and he's the one who knows. He's the other one besides Reggie who knows where the money is. Gans doesn't know, so Luther has to go get the money that they're looking for because Gans kidnaps his girlfriend because once again Gans is evil, and so Luther goes to get that money and they tail him to try to find Gans, and the whole time they're tailing him, they're in this car. The car's chase is going on. The music is incredible to me. I love that music. We'll talk about that in just a second, but the I like the fact that even during the chase scene, it's like tense. They're trying to do the action stuff, but even then, they keep flicking back and forth to shots of Reggie and Kate's like giving each other a hard time about stuff, like making fun of each other. And so they were still using it to develop character. And then you get this really tense uh, standoff with all the bad guys and good guys all showing up with guns, and then other cops who don't know what's going on come in and just ruin the whole thing. I just thought that scene was really good. And then the other one I was going to mention, well, I also really like the bus chase scene. That one is not quite long enough for me. It doesn't go on, but I don't know. I love that scene where they're like you said, Billy Bear's driving a bus. I guess they killed somebody, got that bus, and they're just like running them off the road. I love that. And I love the cinematography in the Chinatown scene. Like when Jack Cates comes out and there's all these neon lights and Chinese symbols, and he's kind of like the neon glow kind of silhouettes Cates for a second. I thought that was so well shot.
That was a brilliant shot. Another scene, I meant to mention this. I love the scene where we actually meet Reggie because it's really unique for a couple of reasons to me. Eddie Murphy had top billing alongside Nick Nolte. We don't see him until like 20 minutes into the film, and then we don't initially see him. We hear him first. He's singing Roxanne by the Police and listening to it on his cassette Walkman.
Yeah.
And that is what he's listening to, that tape and singing Roxanne when Cates walks up and gets him out of jail.
It's a pretty good introduction to his character. You know, when you said that about him being like kind of co-top billed, it made me think it's his first film role, and he's like at the top of the ticket. The only other person that immediately comes to mind is that happened to is Steven Seagal, like with Above the Law. Like he kind of comes out the gate as the top billed star, but like a lot of people have to work their way up to that.
Hey, it paid off. I mean, just look at all of the films. Yeah, it did.
I mean, no matter what you want to say about Steven Seagal, that dude made some money at the box office. Cool, man. Yeah. So I just think those are some of the best scenes. And now I'm so glad you came on to talk about this movie because you love movie scores. I love movie scores. I love James Horner. You love James Horner. What do you think about this score?
I have my notepad that I busted out to take notes on when I sat down to rewatch the film. And one of my first notes that I wrote down was I saw James Horner pop up in the opening credits, and I thought, this doesn't immediately sound like the Alien soundtrack, because I feel like so many of his soundtracks after Aliens was made, and even a little bit before that, had kind of that fingerprint in there. But then, like, I think it was maybe the hotel shootout scene, the hotel lobby shootout scene. There were a couple elements where I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds like Aliens. And Aliens was made 86.
That seems right. I don't remember.
So I think that was like 4 years after this, but he definitely kind of had that timpani that he was really into. This might be one of my favorite James Horner scores. And while I was typing up show notes, I tried to listen to it on Spotify. It's not on Spotify. So I ended up finding it on YouTube, but it's just very diverse, and it's more diverse than a lot of James Horner's other scores that are super timpani heavy. Like, he still has a little bit of that in there. And I think I read that he reused part of this score, like a little bit of it, in Commando. But there are a lot of like kind of jazzy and like avant-garde almost numbers in there. He builds tension really well in a lot of scenes with the score. Like, I think it was the car tailing Luther scene that you were talking about.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on
Mac,
this James Horner score?
I got a lot of thoughts on this James Horner score. I'm sitting here getting all amped up in my chair, just like I got a lot of thoughts about this score. I love this score. So you're talking about how people say it was like reused for Commando or whatever, and like you mentioned, James Horner sort of has the reputation of like plagiarizing himself for a lot of scores. I'm like, hey man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He's
You know
just
what
doing
I like to call that? It's content repurposing.
yeah, how can you plagiarize yourself? So, anyways, like, but I don't know. I've heard people say like this score is the same as Commando or whatever. They're definitely very similar, but like the Commando score especially is a score I've listened to a lot, and they're like they're like twins. They're like not identical twins. They're like fraternal twins or whatever you call that. They're very similar, but they are a little different. I don't know that there's any part that's like exactly borrowed and put into the other one. I just think they're similar in a lot of ways, and I love it. So the Commando score. I hope I'm not talking too fast because I just love these scores. But the Commando score was one of the first scores that, and maybe like Basil Polydoris for Conan the Barbarian, where I just kind of thought like, I love this. I love this. Even before I got into movie scores, I was like, the music in this is awesome. I remember being a kid and watching Commando. I guess I shouldn't say that, but I mean, whatever, it was a different time. I was a kid watching Commando, and like I just remember those steel drums just like stuck with me. I loved them, and they have them in this movie too. And now I'm the kind of guy where like any like little tropical element like that in an action movie score, give it to me. Bongos, steel drums, and I've read online that people like a lot of people hate that the steel drums, but no way, man, I love it. So I think this score is great. It's got the right amount of like synth and some driving bass and that saxophone going crazy and like the steel drums, man, I love it. And I have it on vinyl. Enjoy the Ride Records put out a great vinyl release of it not too long ago. Highly recommend that.
I actually started looking after rewatching the film earlier. I need to get this on vinyl. It is
Yeah,
such a catchy soundtrack.
I ordered the I don't remember who put it out, but I ordered the Commando soundtrack on CD some time ago. So I've got that one on CD. But having this one on vinyl just feels so good. I was listening to it before we started recording. I just love this score. I just wanted to talk about it for a second. Um,
Who
so
doesn't love the steel drums though?
hey, I hear you. I'm with you. I think people think it's a little chaotic. Like for some people, they think it's a little chaotic, but for me, like that works. Like it works to drive the tension. It works here. It works in Commando. Like that saxophone just going crazy, and those steel drums just being like ding 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 ding. I'm here for it. I'm into it.
I agree. It establishes tension really well. It's kind of a little anxiety inducing. I feel like it was very intentional
Yeah,
in its usage.
and it has that like that bass that's just sort of like like I don't know. It does it for me, man. I guess people listening to this are gonna be like, man, the mouth sounds, but I love this score. Uh, it's so good, man. I'm jazzed by this score. Final thoughts on this movie, Mo? Anything we haven't talked about that you want to point out about this classic piece of '80s action cinema?
I just really love this movie. It's one that I will totally revisit. It like you said, it's kind of the father of the subgenre, but it just does so many things that are unique. I think especially with how it has it has humor in there. It has laughs, but it's very
Oh yeah,
subdued and it's really gritty, and there's this acerbic dynamic between the two main characters and how one of them is not even a cop. I think there are just so many little touches there that make it unique. It's got a lot of replay value, and it has just been so influential on subsequent films.
yeah. I totally agree, man. I read this. I love Quentin Tarantino. I mean, got a lot of respect for Quentin Tarantino. But one thing that I read once, and I guess he's like pretty open about this, is like he thinks the '80s were a low time for action. Which, like, okay, we're watching different kinds of action.
Whoa,
Like,
a low time?
yeah, and he loves like '70s stuff, and so he was talking about he was like Walter Hill wasn't doing his best work in the '80s, and as soon as I heard that, I was like, dude, 48 hours? Like I love 48 hours. So as much as I respect Quentin Tarantino, love his movies, got to disagree with him on that. I really like this movie. I think it's just a classic, like you said, so influential. It just really like stands the test of time. I do think that it's kind of unique in its like darkness and grittiness compared to a lot of other, I guess you could say, imitators. As I'm watching it, I mean, like we talked about earlier, there's parts of it where I'm like, man, it's hard to watch. Some of the things, it's hard to like Jack Cates because he's not really a likable character for most of the movie. Like, he's just not really a likable character. A lot of things he says is very uncomfortable to hear, but I just think it's a great movie. It stands the test of time. Like you said, I watch it over and over again. I find myself kind of craving the lightheartedness of a Beverly Hills Cop at points. But Beverly Hills Cop already exists. In fact, there's 4 of them. So I'm glad we have something like 48 Hours that's, a little different, stands on its own, or stands really before. So before we wrap, I've got one thing that I'm going to try out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this in every single episode, but I wanted to do what right now, maybe I'll come up with a better name later, but I'm calling this Buddy Cop Crossovers, and maybe you'll spot some of these as well. But as I was watching this movie, I kept being like, yo, there's a name that I know from another buddy cop movie. There's a name I know from a different buddy cop movie. And I made a little list. So if you'll indulge me, if you and the listener will indulge me, Eddie Murphy, obviously, is going to show up again in not only another 48 Hours, but he's going to show up in Beverly Hills Cop, and he's going to show up opposite Robert De Niro in Showtime. Frank McRae, we've already mentioned as the yelling, screaming police captain, is going to show up again in Last Action Hero and Loaded Weapon, and also another 48 Hours, as you pointed out, or Loaded Weapon 1. Jonathan Banks.
I'm loving this because it's kind of like the murder board that you see in the police station, like make bridge and all the connections. So
this is that hard nerd stuff, man. This is where, if you've made it this far in the podcast, you're here for that hard nerd stuff. This is our 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So Jonathan Banks, playing one of the cops that gets shot at the first. He is obviously one of the bad guys from Beverly Hills Cop. At the in one of the main bad guys in Beverly Hills Cop. Walter Hill, the director of this movie, would return for one of your favorites, Red Heat. Would return to the subgenre, and also he did another 48 Hours. Roger Spottiswoode, who wrote or was one of 4 credited writers on this film, also directed Turner and Hooch and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, a much maligned buddy cop movie that is the maybe only entry in the cop and mom subgenre. Steven D'Souza. So here's the thing. Steven D'Souza is a name that anytime I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. If you see Steven D'Souza's name attached to an 80s or early 90s action movie, you are about to get some treasure, usually. But really, going through his list, the only one that I really would consider another buddy cop movie is he worked some on Beverly Hills Cop 3. But he's famous for things like, I hope I don't get any of these wrong, but like obviously Die Hard, Commando, lots of other movies that I love. And then Joel Silver, a name that everybody recognizes, would do production work on Lethal Weapon and The Last Boy Scout. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Can you think of any I left out?
I can't think of any that you left out.
Maybe if we get some listeners, they might be like, you missed one. But I feel like I didn't. I didn't actually connect it all with yarn and thumbtacks. But now that you're saying that, maybe I should. Maybe I should do that. All right, man.
There's going to be some listener fan mail. They'll send some corrections. You missed this guy.
Yeah. Well, hey, I love it. You know what? I just realized when you said that, I don't have an email or anything to plug for this podcast yet. We are on Instagram. So as we're wrapping up here, I'll just say, that's it for 48 Hours of Movie I Love. The podcast is on Instagram, at Steak and Shake Pod. Steakhouse and Shakedowns was so long. And Crystal recommended I shorten it to Steak and Shake Pod. So it's STAKE and Shake Pod on Instagram. So you can send me a message there, give us a little follow there. Hopefully, once I figure this whole podcasting thing out, Mo's going to help me figure out how to get this everywhere that you get podcasts, I hope. So you can like us, follow us, review us, give us a nice rating on there. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at Cliff Weston on Instagram. Mo, where can listeners find you, man? You got anything you want to plug, or just plug your social media, or what's up?
Yeah, you can follow me at Mitchell C. Long on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow me at Cup of Mo on Blue Sky. You can also follow the Celluloid Fiends podcast on Instagram. You can check out cupofmo.com. And also, I know we mentioned this earlier, but check out the Celluloid Fiends podcast. If you listen to that, you will hear both myself and Wes on a number of episodes.
So check all that out. We will see you all next time. And until then, y'all be cool. Right on.